Hi everybody, I'm Dave Gilchrist and welcome to tonight's Bookmarks presentation of Tim Evans's new book of poetry, Bones of the Apocalypse. I'm very pleased to introduce this tonight. I must have known Tim since I was about 20 or so, and since that was 44 years ago, that is quite a long time. So very happy to introduce him. I'm not going to go on. I'm just going to hand over to Tim now and have a great evening.
Okay, hi, hello to people out there in space. It's great to be here. It's great to be having a go at. I'm just trying to adjust myself. That's the best. There we go. That's better. I just want to thank everybody who's watching this for being here. I want to also thank Dave for hosting it, and I want to thank the poets who are going to be reading from the book. The book. So I want to basically, after welcoming everybody, I want to hand over to my publisher, Iqbal Malik, who edits Frequency House, who's going to say something about the publishing house, and then we have a brief talk interview about the book and the poems, and then we'll read the poems, and that should take us to about 7:30. So over to you, Iqbal.
Thanks, Tim. Evening, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be a part of the launch today. Not everybody will know me. My name's Iqbal Malik. I'm the editor and director of Frequency House. We're basically a new publishing outfit based in South Wales. We've been going for a couple of years now, and Tim is our latest book to be launched. So I'm the director and editor. I'm also the poet in residence at the Dylan Thomas birthplace in Swansea. I just wanted to say a little bit about Frequency House so people get a bit of a feel for it. We're essentially a sort of boutique mixed arts label, and we sign sort of musicians, poets, visual artists. So we go across the spectrum. But essentially, we sign those people whose music and ideas and arts essentially sit outside the mainstream. We do embrace the unconventional, the unorthodox, people who are non-traditionalist, and we value alternative voices as well. People who, like Tim, who actually pursue their art fiercely and without compromise. So let me just see what I was going to do. So what I thought we'd do today was just basically to have a bit of a question and answer thing just to begin with between myself and Tim, get a feel for the book. Like I said, I was absolutely thrilled to be a part of this. I mean, Tim's work is not just political with a capital P. It's challenging, insightful. It's immensely personal. There's a couple of poems in there which are about a couple of poets who actually passed away over the last few years. Extremely touching. So, in my mind, it has everyone really, and it's a sort of journey through many parts of Tim's life. But before we get into the poems and the book itself, Tim, I thought perhaps just give people a context as to why you chose the title "Bones of the Apocalypse."
Yeah. I think that I mean, part of it is where we are now, politically. That we're in intense global crisis, which is not just the pandemic, which is actually a manifestation of the way that we have mistreated, or rather that capitalism has mistreated the planet. We're also facing environmental catastrophe, plus the political and economic ramifications of that. So I think we're entering a period of crisis, but but also the word apocalypse has got a different meaning. It's got another meaning. It means, as in, if you in the Bible, the book of Revelations, the same word, to reveal, right? And apocalypse in its original Greek word also means from cover. It means from cover. It means showing what is there, showing what was there but was hidden. And there was a great quote that somebody said on a recent, it was actually a stand-up to racism conference, where she said, it's not so much that things are getting worse, but the things are getting visible. And that's, I think, something, to really, really think about and really to take heart from. So so the apocalypse, that's where I'm going with the word. Really.
Yeah, and so a lot of the poems, Tim, they're, as you say, very, very political with a capital P, and they talk about all the big issues, really: racism, Palestine, Grenfell, police violence, the pandemic, and as I said in the intro, a lot of them are very intimate as well, about your grandfather, dreams of childhood, tributes to certain poets like Mark Montanaro, Vijay Singh, friends who've died. How do you feel that all of that sort of sits together?
For me, it sits together okay. Obviously, some of my poems are overtly. I mean, the smart arse answer to it is that, the personal is political and the political is personal, and everything has a political perspective. And that's true, but it's far too glib. Because my poetry is yes about politics, and that's been a major part of my life, since I met Dave Gilchrist, actually. No, he didn't start me off. I was already involved. But yeah, it's been a major part of my life. But my poetry is about my life. And that means my dreams, my fears, my nightmares, my people I know who have died, things that have happened to me. I think that's what poetry is. And although although some of them seem less political than others, there are certainly some of my poems that have got both elements. One of the poems I'm going to read later is about, on one level, it's memories of a road trip across America, but it has as its main motif the Vietnam War. And there are other similar poems. There's one about the Grateful Dead, which is, on one level a tribute to one of my favorite musical bands, but is also a political question. We made music, but we did not make the revolution. So, things overlap. Things are not clear boxes, I don't think.
Yeah. So, there's obviously a strong sense of place in the poems. There's poems about Swansea, Llanelli, Portsmouth, but obviously in particular Swansea, where we're actually based. But two of them are about Swansea drinking dens that I think both Tim and I and a few others know relatively intimately, Mozart's and the Tembe. Can you just say something about why those two and why they were important for you, Tim?
Yeah, sure. Sense of place. Southwest Wales, really. Although, ironically, I've spent huge chunks of my life in Hertfordshire and in Portsmouth. Most of my working life was there. I always believed that I was a Llanelli Llanelli boy. You know, that was the town I identified with. That was the town that I felt was home. You know, even after I left it, even after I spent years living elsewhere, that was where I felt was home. And Swansea, of course, for us living in Llanelli, Swansea was, you know, bright lights, big city. You know, Llanelli was a much. Llanelli was known as the biggest village in Wales, and you know, one of the poems about the Tenby is specifically about that. Is about escaping, about us escaping from Llanelli to Swansea, where we could actually find a pub that would serve 16-year-olds. And that was the Tenby. And even in the 60s, it was a rough pub. And of course, that was immensely attractive to us coming out of Llanelli in 1966. And we wanted to live, you know? So we went to Swansea and we drank at the Tenby, you know? And we took pills and we passed out on the beach, you know? I mean, so it's very much sort of a rite of passage, really, you know, as you're breaking loose from your family, as you're beginning the journey, you know, and you have to go through certain stages, and for us, you know, going through that was an important stage. And also the poem, the Tenby, is a lot about a guy called Pete Cowley, known as Swansea Pete, who was also the first guy we knew up here who smoked dope, and was also therefore even more incredibly credible for us, you know. And it was a bit of a tragic story with Pete. He ended up heavily into smack in London, but he survived. He came back to Swansea, but he was very much part of the scene in the Tenby. Mozart's Iqbal will know, because he compared Howl Poetry Night there, and Mozart's. Both these places are now closed. The Tenby closed before the pandemic and now believes it's a coffee house, you know. Although, as I say in the poem, you know, ghosts, you know, ghostly speed freaks and ghostly smackheads will haunt that place for all eternity. And so it closed. It turned into a coffee house. Mozart's closed, which was immensely upsetting for most of the poetry scene in Swansea, because it was a bloody great poetry night. It was, you know, one of those sticky floor places, which you know, you could, if you, it was always open late. So if you fancied a few pints at 1 a.m, then you went there, and it was a great poetry night, and so that was, you know, those were important places, certainly for me. And the one about Mozart's is meant as a tribute to a place that, you know, we may not see again, you know.
So you go through the sort of local, you get to talk about Mozart, you talk about the Tenby, Llanelli, Swansea, etc. Obviously in the book, it's split into 8 kind of sections, all with their own kind of personality and own energy, really. One of the sections, The Summers of Love, contains memories then of your road trip that you made from New York, I think it was, to San Francisco in 1968. So you've taken us again on this kind of, you know, sort of biographical journey to another wonderful place in the world. But that was a year in which a lot was happening in America, a lot happening around the world. Perhaps you can tell us something a little bit about that, Tim, and why you wanted to kind of articulate those poems and to recapture that?
Sure. The experience really. I think I was what 18, 19. 18. The experience changed me. I think it politicized me. I was already political. I was in CND and I had been on the first Grosvenor Square demonstration against Vietnam. But being in America in '68 was to be aware of incredible political and social polarization, really, in that it was a cultural thing, partially with, I hate the word bloody hippie, by the way, but the countercultural scene in America. And this '68, this was happening at the same time. I think the Kennedy the Younger had been shot. I think Martin Luther King had been shot. There was a pushback by the right and by the establishment and by the CIA against the explosions that were happening, both in Black America. The civil rights movement had been going on for years, and there had been ghetto uprisings, Watts and other places. So, it was very, very polarized, what we did, we just got a drive-away car, which was the cheapest way to get across coast to coast in America. You got a car that some company or firm or person wanted delivered to the other coast, and the cheapest way to do it was to do it like that. So we just crammed the car with loads of people and split the petrol costs, which you're not supposed to do, but we did it, and we took several days. We were driving like day and night. People were taking it in shifts and other people crashing out. We stopped at various places. One of the places was Twin Falls in Utah, and the poem that I'm going to read is in a minute is the events that took place there. It was in the middle of the Vietnam War, and that polarized people, but it also made the politics much more real. Like in Britain, the counterculture was like about kipper ties in Carnaby Street. That's not strictly true, but in America, young people were being taken and sent to Vietnam. It was really real, and various things. I mean, we were in Berkeley when the National Guard was called out to suppress student uprisings. It got, really hairy. I think some of the precursors of the Angry Brigade, a campus police office was blown up while we were there, So it was a highly polarized society, but it was a remarkable experience, hitchhiking up and down California, basically in this community, this countercultural community, which, like your badges were long hair and your clothes. And so, people would, take you into their groups, So it was a hell of an experience, but it also was very difficult in many ways, We were forever being moved on by the police. We were sleeping on beaches in an abandoned logging cabin, and the police burst in one night with bloody guns and stuff, and we were cleared out. cleared out of there. So it was a pretty intense experience. And so there are 3 poems in the book that relate to that. Anyway, I'll stop now and begin to go on.
Thanks, Tim. I mean, I've only got a couple more questions, really, but I do think it helps to sort of contextualize your book and the writing before you do a reading as well. But it's quite interesting that about sort of date stamping a period, date stamping some poems. You know, we live through the Anthropocene era, and there's lots happening at the moment. Obviously, the COVID world as well. But in your section, the plague years, that's essentially about the pandemic. And how did COVID impact on your writing, and how do you think that might have impacted on the Swansea sort of poetry scene then, Tim?
Right. To be honest, you know, once we'd got over the shock of the whole thing and realizing the enormity of it, which I think stunned a lot of us as poets for a while, as we got our head around what actually was happening. But after that, poetry for me was a really important way of expressing not just a, you know, extreme fear and disquiet, but also bloody furious anger. You know, it's one thing being in a deadly pandemic. It's another thing being in a deadly pandemic with a government that appears to be intent on killing you off. You know, eugenicists who believe in herd immunity. I mean, these people it's the voodoo stuff, you know, and it's like being run by drunk children, you know, who make up policy as they go along. It's actually worse. I think drunk children would be quite benign, but this lot. So the fury and the anger, you know, poetry was you know, an important channel for that, and there are poems in the book that go into this. You know, one of them is called "The Bastards Are Still Out There," you know, and one of them is called "If the Dead Can't Call for Justice." But in terms of the poetry scene in Swansea, it did have a hugely negative impact. You know, we were running, Rhoda and myself were running Live Poets Society, which, you know, was an explicitly political poetry night. And, you know, we had backdrop of projections of demonstrations and uprisings. You know, we had banners, stand up to racism banners, placards, you know, around the stage, and we encouraged political poetry. And, you know, we were anti-racist, we were anti-homophobic, we were anti-capitalist, and it was a safe space. It was a safe space for trans people. It was a safe space for people of color. It was a safe space for everybody apart from the fascists and the right wing and the other scumbags. So it was a great place, and it was a great venue, you know, and some nights, rainy nights in Swansea, on a Monday night, we got nearly 100 and sometimes about 100 people in, you know, often young people who wanted to make some sense of an increasingly senseless society. So that was hit, as were the other poetry nights. And we are, you know, trying to come back to, you know, at the moment, infections are going up, especially in Wales. So I know Talisman has gone back, and, you know, so you know, there's nothing we would like, you know, more than to go back to live poetry as soon as possible. But at the same time, we have to be careful about these things, and we can't do it. We can't do it if we don't feel safe. So that's, I suppose, where we are with that.
Yeah. So I was just flicking through the book there because you mentioned a few things about the government, COVID, etc. One of the sections, obviously, this is the book, Bones of the Apocalypse. One of the sections,
plug.
Yes, enemies and friends, and it's got, obviously, each section of your book, Tim, has got your own artwork as well. So for people who haven't yet seen it, in this section, enemies and friends, this is some of Tim's artwork. But there's two poems in that section. I mean, they're absolutely brutal. They're so hard hitting. One is What's Worse Than the Tory, and the second one was or is Who Killed Grenfell. Can you tell us a little bit about those two?
Yeah, I should say the artwork, although I did the original drawings, Rhoda also manipulated them on digital so that they look the way that they do. So I want to credit her for that. Yeah, the visuals were a conscious attempt. I like mixed stuff, you know. I like visual stuff and verbal stuff, and I like it to be mixed together. All the poetry books, well, the three poetry books I've done have all been illustrated. You know, the first two by Anya Stanina, a fine artist here in Swansea. But those poems remind me of what they were again.
What's Worse Than the Tory?
What's Worse Than a and Grenfell? Yeah.
Yeah.
What's Worse Than a Tory? And I'm going to have to condense this because we don't want to spill too far over the 20 minutes, really. But What's Worse Than a Tory comes from the great socialist, Naib Evan, who called the Tories lower than vermin, which I would concur with. But what is in many ways even more disgusting is when your own supposed friends stab you in the back. I'm talking about most, not all, there's some notable exceptions, but most of the Parliamentary Labour Party helped the media and the Tories and the rest of the British establishment to crucify the best socialist leader of the Labour Party that I can remember. And that, for me, is an unforgivable act of betrayal. Yeah, we know that if Corbyn had got in, that would have just been the start of a massive battle with the British establishment. But for him to have been crucified or filleted by his own Parliamentary Labour Party, creatures like Margaret Hodge, and these completely nonsensical and disingenuous accusations of anti-Semitism. You know, I've been in the Labour movement, if not in the Labour Party, for, you know, most of my adult life. But I to be honest, I personally, I'm lucky. I personally have never heard any anti-Semitic. I've heard plenty of it from Tories. I have heard plenty of it elsewhere, but I've not heard it on the left. So what's worse than a Tory is an attempt to put these people in the frame, you know, who would rather see Tories in power than socialists. And the other one, Grenfell, it speaks for itself. I mean, what was done at Grenfell was, I think Engels used the term social murder. And what happened at Grenfell was social murder. they had built a tower block with cheap, flammable material that everybody knew was likely to go up in flames. And the fact that those people are still walking the streets, the fact that nobody, this was years ago now, the fact that nobody has done time over this is a total scandal. So the poem is based on Dylan's song "Who Killed Davy Moore," which in turn was based on "Who Killed Cock Robin," an old traditional folk song. So that's what that's about.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna have
yeah,
to.
sorry, Tim, go on.
Yeah, I spoke too long, actually.
Yeah, no,
But
I'm just aware that we need to sort of try to stick with the time as well, because we'll probably hear some of these poems. But I've just got one more question I think might be quite helpful, because your book as well is topped and tailed with an amazing introduction and a really lovely kind of acknowledgement section at the end. But your introduction is called "Towards a Poetry of Resistance," and you quote from the revolutionary Leon Trotsky, who said, "In this time of convulsive reaction, cultural decline, and return to savagery, truly independent creation has to be revolutionary by its very nature." I mean, what do you think he meant by that, Tim?
yeah, I mean, his writings generally are amazing, but I think I believe I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that he was writing as fascism began to take root in the 30s, and I think that we are in many ways in similar difficulties, to put it mildly, because of course on top of that we have the environmental crisis, which is coming down, but that I think poetry now has to take sides, and I think poetry in the 30s had to take sides. Are you with the forces that would destroy us? Are you for death, or are you for life? Are you for the continuation of the human race? Are you for the changes that are necessary? There are two other quotes that I'll probably end with. Rosa Luxemburg, the choice facing humanity is socialism or barbarism. And the other also from Rosa Luxemburg, the most revolutionary act is to proclaim loudly what is going on. And that is what poets have, if they care about the existence, the continued existence of the human race and many other species, then they have to proclaim loudly what is going on, and that is a revolutionary act. And I think we really must shut up there, otherwise we're going to go into. But yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity really to put the poem somewhat in context. I think I'll kick off with one of them, and then it'll be Iqbal and Des, followed by Carol, Xavier, Margaret, and then we got two videos, and then we'll that'll be them. So I'll kick off with the incident at Twin Falls. in terms of the counterculture, I'm pleased to say that today is the birthday of Grace Slick of the Jefferson Airplane. So I just thought I'd chuck that in there because some people will the name will mean something anyway, and also it did mean quite a lot to me in 1968, and so the poem is the poem is I mentioned Twin Falls, and the poem is Incident at Twin Falls, 1968. A hot day in Twin Falls. We drive into town, wheels spinning up a thick cloud of dust as we stop at a convenience store for 7-Ups and Marlboros. A year has passed since the Summer of Love, and we're on the road from New York to San Francisco, into the outposts of a divided America, through the deserts of Ozymandias, King of Kings. Every city, town, and village has its colony of rebels. The tribes stick together in this hostile territory. Some crazy acid freaks welcome us into their house. We spend the night rapping and smoking before we wake for the last big drive down Highway 84 into the Golden City. It is midnight. The room hazy with smoke. On the turntable, a Chambers Brothers album is playing. And Maria is coming out of the kitchen with cups of tea when, blam, someone kicks open the door. 2 mean-looking guys with crew cuts fill the house with a stink of beer and the smell of rage. There is a stars and stripes hanging as a drape between the living room and the bedroom. I've seen good men die for that flag, one of them snarls as he rips it down. We are stoned and petrified. They are furious and drunk. Local boys on furlough, just back from Vietnam. They've spent the afternoon driving around, getting wasted and cursing out those dirty hippies with an American flag in the wall. So by the witching hour, they're ready to teach us a lesson and kick in our front door. They glare around the room. They zero in on me. I'm going to cut your hair, motherfucker. You got a scissors? The room shakes its collective head. Or a knife? And then luck flies in the window like a bluebird. One of our group, a bearded biker, is a school friend of the second grunt. And they're talking about old times, and the tension drains away. And the 2 guys relax, and they apologize, and after a while they leave, and we sink down on the bean bags, but there's no time for relief because suddenly the front door opens, and the first guy returns to apologize some more. We desperately want him to fuck off, but he wants to talk. And he tells us a story about being up in a helicopter above the jungle with some Viet Cong prisoners. And they question the first one, but he's tough, he won't talk. So they chuck him out. And they question the second one, but he's tough too, he won't say a word. So they throw him out. But prisoner number 3 cracks, and he tells them everything they need to know. So now they don't need any of them, so they throw them all out. And the guy's laughing till the tears roll down his face and the scent of booze rolls off him like the scent of napalm. And we're laughing too. And after he's finished laughing, he disappears into the night. And we lie there, and the sour taste of our laughter at the death of men burns our tongues like hot coals. And early in the morning, our friends give us breakfast of coffee and waffles, and we drive away down Highway 84 to where the sun glints on the Golden Gate and a white pelican sails softly above the vast blue swell of the Pacific. Okay, that's the one. Now we have Iqbal Malik, who's going to read The Face of a Soldier.
Thank you, Tim. So I forgot to mention, and I will mention it now, I actually have your mug here, Frequency House mug, to promo for your book. So I'll be getting that over to you this week. So Face of a Soldier. I'm really quite happy to read this. Happy is possibly not the right word, but it's a very touching poem. I'll just read the footnote, which says, the creation of the State of Israel in 1948 involved the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians, an event known as the Nakba, or catastrophe. Each year, approximately 500 to 700 Palestinian children, some as young as 12 years old, are detained and prosecuted in the Israeli military court system. The most common charge is stone throwing. So I just thought it was a really, really hard-hitting poem. Face of a Soldier. A static image anchored in the moment the photo was taken. 4 soldiers loaded with heavy weaponry, body armor, olive green field dress and steel-capped boots, dragging a 12-year-old boy towards an armored car. The boy wears a Spider-Man t-shirt and blue tracksuit bottoms with an FC Barcelona decal. His flailing feet can't touch the ground because the soldiers have hoisted him in the air. One of his battered trainers lies in the rubble behind him, lost forever in the sand as they carry him ever closer to the armored car. His face is slick with tears as he begs and pleads. When the begging doesn't work, he kicks and screams for his friend Rashid. Was snatched only 3 months ago and he never came back. He pleads that he is only on his way home, that his little sister is waiting for him, that he never threw any stones. Please, mister, let me go. He's a child of Hebron. 3 of the soldiers are wearing visors so their faces are not visible. But the 4th has his helmet pushed back so that you can see his face clearly, frozen in that second. He is a new recruit, a pale-faced teenager, not yet brutalized. And in that frozen second, his unguarded face tells all. His look is guilty, furtive, frightened, even though he is the one clad in body armor and toting a Galil assault rifle. He stares over his shoulder to see, not that if there are any witnesses, that does not worry him, but with that guilty glance, he's afraid that God is watching. He is a haunted glance that knows that if this is his future, then every time he pulls the trigger, he blows a piece of himself away. Until to do this bloody job, he must condemn all Palestinians to the same realm of the Untermenschen to which the German Jews were sent. And in that moment, in the horror frozen on his face, he sees, like other oppressors who have come before him, to Ireland, to India, to South Africa, that he stands at the wrong end of history. And for him and for his masters, this war is already lost.
Great, thank you, Iqbal. Nicely delivered.
Thanks, Tim.
And I hope it says what it was meant to say. Okay, next up we have old friend and comrade of mine, Des Manet from Newport, who is going to read the poem that I talked about earlier. What's worse than a Tory? So take it away, Des.
Thank you very much. And it's one of those poems that you wish you'd have written yourself, sort of thing. And what's worse than a Tory? You know what's worse than a Tory? Than Boris, Gove or Patel, or Thatcher and Co, a priori, and the other vile creatures from hell? You know what's worse than a Tory? Pampered, smug, and well fed. And the Tories are lower than vermin. That's what good old Nye Bevan said. You know what's worse than a Tory? In their party of rulers and kings, their party of bankers and wankers and sponsors of corporate sins. I'll tell you what's worse than a Tory: more hateful, rank than this crew, more loathsome, egregious and churlish, more wretched and arrogant too. And that's the kind of class traitor you'll find in the PLP, who prefer to see Tories in power than the likes of you and me. They pretend that they're there for the workers, but they're really there for the cash. Where they're pimping up their careers, they treat their own members like trash. You know where you are with your enemy, but these are your enemy's spies, the boss's class-owned secret agents. Their trade is in falsehood and lies. So I asked you, what's worse than a Tory? Well, here are a few. Now you know. Those who stand on the wrong side of history, into the dustbins will go. And I think that says it all.
I should also introduce Des Manet as hooligan poet and performer and author of beautifully named Sodom and Tomorrow, which I have a copy of. I can recommend it. It's brilliant. If you want a copy, get in touch with Des.
I think our books sort of butt end each other, don't they, in terms of attitude and where we're going.
Yeah, I think there's a certain amount of crossover there. I'm glad you wish it was a poem that you've written. That's a great great sense of achievement there. Okay, next up we have Carol Grimes, who I met through online, but I remember Carol from way back. She didn't know me, but I knew her as a brilliant singer. You were involved in Rock Against Racism, weren't you, in some of those gigs, and those were great times. You probably don't remember. I did have a pint with you at some free festival somewhere. God knows, in the days of those days. So you're going to read for Janis. I want to remind people that it is Grace Slick of the Jefferson Airplanes' birthday today. But of course, she and Janis Joplin were sort of predominant singers in the counterculture, and were like Carol, were strong women in predominantly male-orientated industries. So over to you, Carol.
Okay, for Janis. Golden Gate Park, late afternoon. The long summer of '68. Already the height was thick with stag. The speakers were cranked up to maximum volume. The thunder of Big Brother and the holding company shook the park. Your voice was twisted with pain, syllables stretched and strained, and as the voodoo of the blues took over your body and spirit, you scraped the ribs of that Cuban guiro as if you wanted to kill it. We danced under the afternoon sun and the shade of the trees, air thick with hashish. And up on stage you swirled, satin shirt floating, the white fringes of your leather trousers whipping your legs as you stamped the platform. Jesus, your body seemed so slight, so naked to the storms of fate and fortune, so open to the capacity of a bottle of Jack Daniels to settle the issue, all issues, once and for all. What I remembered most was your face, and as the last chords of Ball and Chain faded away and the crowd burst into crazy applause, I was in the churned mud up the front, and later convinced myself we had made prolonged, significant eye contact. You looked almost angelically radiant. You were in your place, among your people. And it was almost as if you could not believe we loved you so much. And you smiled and smiled and smiled, and the stomping and hooting went on and on and on, for a minute after minute after minute, as the shadows lengthened in that late afternoon, in the long hot summer of '68.
Thank you so much, Carol. That was great. That I was listening to it. It really took me back there. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. Okay, and next up we have Xavier. Xavier Paredes. Known him for years. He's a poet of renown, and also a Catalan, and involved in the struggle for Catalan independence. And Xavier is going to read one of the poems which I wrote during the pandemic, called "The Bastard Is Still Out There." So take it away, Xavier. We need to unmute Xavier, Dave. Hang on. Dave? Hello?
Yeah, that's it. Excellent.
Okay, cool.
Thank you very much for inviting me to the presentation of Bones of the Apocalypse. Is an honor. And this poem, I was studying this poem and I read the rest of the book. It felt to me like a hammer. It's like a hammer really smashing my emotions. So it's quite an effective book for contemplation, with what's going on nowadays. I did study the poem in depth before performing, and I had to imagine, there was a hammer or somebody slapping me, So I'm going to try to convey this, through reciting it as close as I can. The bastard is still out there in the night. The virulent, violent virus stealing people's lives. With vital downloads, vital feeds, vital overloads, vital hits, vital truth and vital lies, vital thieves and vital spies, vital beanbags, vital hats, vital dogs and vital cats, vital schools and vital bones, vital sticks and vital stones, vital log, vital scripts, vital book gets you peace, vital spirals, vital thighs, vital flares and keeper ties, vital hedgecoats, vital paint, vital vinyl looks quite caned, vital pissoirs, vital blues, vital Cuban blue sweet shoes, vital monsters in the dark, vital neutrons, vital quacks, vital plagues throughout the nations, vital acts and alienations, vital cell contaminations, vital sweat and perspiration, vital cock-ups, vital blacks, vital blue in plastic bags, vital mice and vital pigs, vital goopies, vital squids, vital coffee, vital tea, vital spit and ecstasy, vital dancing in the dark, vital dreams of Bonaparte, vital danger in the night, vital acid satellites, vital antibody strikes, vital dips and vital spikes. And the bastard is still out there, hiding in plain sight, a virulent, violent virus stealing people's lives, a virulent, violent virus stealing people's lives, hiding in plain sight, hiding in plain sight, hiding in plain sight. The bastard is still out there.
That was a cracker, Xavier. Thank you so much. That was brilliant.
I love studying this poem, man.
You
all the pronunciations and the needs and I love that, man. Thank you for giving the opportunity.
It was for me writing it. It was a good way of getting rid of all the, because it was at a time when like all the news, and everything was viral.
Yeah, it was.
So brilliant, and we are thinking about putting together something musical, aren't you?
Yes, my studio is near completion, and currently organizing, getting rid of a lot, and until that is done, I won't say that, but it's getting there, but before that, I may go to studio to work more with my producer, and I may do the song, but I wanna get it right, especially with the bits and pieces, how to, poses, etc. And I do study them quite a lot, So, but
that's brilliant.
Definitely, I'll do a song in the near future. Definitely.
Yeah. I should say also that Xavier, as well as being a poet and activist, he's had a book published called The Eternal Poet.
The Year of Eternity. The Year of Eternity. There's a song.
All right.
There's a poem there called Eternal Poets that is a song too, unpublished yet, finished.
Right.
No, it's published because it was that 20th anniversary from Catalonia. Well, from all over the world, they did an album, as
cool.
This is my three faces, So
Brill. Great. So people, if they want to get hold of a copy of that, get in touch with Xavier. Right. Next, we have Margaret O'Regan from over in Ireland, from Cork, a poet and also political activist. So, Margaret, I will mute myself and hopefully Dave will unmute you.
Thank you, Tim. Some marvelous renditions of your poems, and this is truly a book of resistance poetry. It is absolutely marvelous, and it will have such universal appeal. It will appeal to every country, but it will also appeal to everyone who reads about their emotions, who wants to learn. There's a huge amount of understanding between the pages of this book. And I just love the contrast between the poems about emotions and then the ones about anti-imperialism, anti-racism, all those activist poems as well, grist to the mill. So this one is called Car Park. They both knew they will soon leave, returning to the company of others. So for these moments alone, they lean drunk into each other's eyes in the car park under the stars. The moon shines, a coin cradled in a palm, the gleaming zip of a black leather jacket. Her lips are wet. They lean together against the side of the white overnight van. She tugs down his jeans. His cock stiffens in her warm hand. He takes hold of her through the faded denim, rolls her between his fingers, and so, for a while, they sway with growing urgency, braced against the delivery van, until, with a gasp and a broken cry, they come together, and for the briefest time are lost in the swell of the ocean. That's it.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Margaret. Incident in a car park. But,
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I just love it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. That's brilliant, and a different atmosphere, if you like, from
Yes.
the more political poems. You know, much more about human feelings and human love and human sexuality.
And
well,
you deal a lot with the emotions and with death and with grieving, and really you have such understanding of life. All these poems are also very, very entertaining. Serious political ones also very entertaining.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you. That's really, really nice. That's really great for you to say. Thank you. It's you know, they are you know, personal and political, and I don't think that there is really a division between them.
I agree.
You know. Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you, Margaret. So next, we've got a video from Kemba Hadaway, who was a trade union activist. She couldn't be here for this, but she has sent us a video. She's going to read. It's another coronavirus poem, and it's called "The Wolves Are Out Tonight."
Thank you for my copy. Amazing work. I loved all the poems, but there was one that really stood out for me. The Wolves Are Out Tonight. I think you've captured the horrors of the last 18 months and counting in a really deep way, in a way that finding words and language was difficult for many of us to get at the raw feelings that we all had towards the establishment and how they handled the pandemic. And I think you've brought not only imagery and the context of the pandemic, brought it out in this poem, but you've also really captured the deep anger that many of us have felt. So without further ado, I'll do my reading, and let's hope I do it justice. Let's hope I can do the poet justice as I read his work. The wolves are out tonight, roaming under starlight, running wild-toothed in a savage silver stream, of vicious indifference, murderers at large in a dream that the whole world is dreaming. Numbers rack up in this month's streaming. The wolves are coming, their eyes gleaming. They stole your breath from your lips with no apology or warning. It's time to meet death on this bright summer morning. They say evil is banal, but combine it with rapacity. Lock it up in a cabal whose only center of gravity is a badge on your lapel. It's such a hateful travesty, such arrogant cowards, such corruption and depravity. Government fails and thousands die in agony. Please, for God's sake, spare us your sanctimony, which you seem to offer without any irony. You don't have the qualities. You like a bit of jollity. You wanted the authority without responsibility, without the basic skills, without the capability. Like all of your class, you like a bit of flash. You haven't got a clue what it's like with no cash. And once we get out from under this tragedy, there'll be scores to be settled in simple solidarity. The workers showed the courage. The workers face death. The so-called unskilled, the exploited and oppressed. The rich men and oppressors showed no backbone, no spine. We were led by the worst at the worst of all times. And once we get a handle on the scale of their crimes, it surely can't be far. It surely can't be far. It surely can't be far to revolution time. Thank you.
That's great. I'm really glad Kemba was able to send in the video. And next up, we have Manjit Sahota, who's sent us also in a video. Manjit, just let me get the intro, let me get it right here. Manjit is, although he's a poet, he's also co-founder of the National Poets Against Racism. And the poem he's going to read is If the Dead Can't Call for Justice, which is another plague poem. Okay, there you go.
This poem's called If the Dead Can't Call for Justice. I want to bear witness first of all to the crimes committed by those in power, the bankers, billionaires and all their moneyed careerists and political cowards. Their system bred this awful plague and turned a beautiful planet toxic as they mixed disease with making food and burrowed through jungle in search of profit. Puffed up on premium grade cocaine, whole fortunes hoovered up their nose. When the day of reckoning came, all they could do was smirk and pose. They cheated, swindled, bluffed and lied, delayed U-turns and hid their heads in the sand. They averted their eyes while thousands die and drug profits flowed into corporate hands. Had you and I caused through criminal negligence or simple stupidity so many deaths, while other governments dealt with the pestilence with fewer resources and greater success, we would have been held account for our sins, for our missions, commissions, blood on our hands. No amount of justification or spin would have cleared us of our guilt of those we had damned. To die struggling for breath in an ICU, The porters and nurses cast into hell, the teachers, tube workers, no time off in lieu, the refugees locked in disease-ridden cells. A disease system bred this disease. To stop the disease, you have to get rid of the system. It's managed by murderers, conmen and thieves, a whole array of morbid symptoms. One day they'll be held account for their crimes. And until that day, we will never forget. If the dead can't get justice in these times, then it's up to us to collect the debt.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Manjit, for that. Okay, I'm going to read. We're coming to the last section, really, of the evening. So I'm just deciding which poem I'm going to read to wind things off. I was going to do another heavy-duty political one, but we've had several, so I want to just create a little bit of contrast, if you like. So this is the poem that it's the first poem in the book, and it's about perhaps the thing next to politics, or along with politics, that is really important to all human beings, and that is the sense of connection with others and of love for others. And that's a way that we overcome our own alienation in the here and now, really. So this one's called If I Were to Meet You. If I were to meet you down by the harbour wall, as the shadows start to lengthen and the seagulls wheel and call, where the waves cry to the shoreline and the sunlight dazzles the sea, and I have no expectations of a truth to set me free. And if we started out just from that time and space, with disbelief and doubt banished from the place, would you come with me upon the ship that sails upon this tide, across futures quite untested and oceans yet untried, and risk it all on the throw of a dice, where luck is all laid down beneath the cobblestones, the beach, and the rocks of the lost and found? And would you voyage with me to the valleys of the sun, be my lover, my companion, until all the days are done, and the present and the past collide, and the shape the spirits take are only promises cast like bread on the belly of the lake? Okay, so that's really just leaves me to wind up the evening. So I want to thank everybody who's been watching this. I want to thank all the poets who read my poems. I want to thank Dave and Bookmarks for hosting it, and thanks to Iqbal at Frequency House for publishing it. I want to thank Rhoda for her continued love and support. You can get copies of Bones of the Apocalypse from Bookmarks if you ring them up, or if you go online, you can get them from there. Or if you want to befriend me on Facebook, message me, then I can get in touch with you then. So I want to wish everybody all strength for the struggles ahead, and in your own journeys, in your own personal journeys, your poetical journeys, your musical journeys, your political journeys. And I want to close with one of my favorite slogans from those times in 1968 in France, where we became closest to a revolution in one of the most advanced capitalist nations than I can remember, and that was all power to the imagination, which I think was one of the, next to the other one, which was be realistic, demand the impossible. Those are things we need to take out and dust over and use again, because we may not make history in the circumstances of our own choosing, but by God, we are the ones who make history, and we should never forget that. So I want to say good night to everybody. I want to bring it to a close now. Thanks everybody for coming and reading, and as I say, thanks to Dave for hosting. Okay, cheers now. Remember, you can get the book from Bookmarks or from me, and there you go. Yes, great quote from James Connolly. Our demands most moderate are